Hey, so if you're looking for your first camera for video, should you go out and buy a camera like the Sony ZV1 or maybe a Sony A6400, which is what we're shooting on now? Well, we've been using both cameras for some months now, so in this video, we're going to give you our full overview on what we think could be the best camera for you. Hey there, welcome to the video. I'm Mark Brown from Editor's Keys, and if you're new here, consider subscribing if you're into video editing or filmmaking. Now, in this video, we're talking about two cameras which are talked a lot about on YouTube, and that's the Sony ZV1 and the Sony A6400. So in this video, we're going to go through the pros and cons to see whether you should buy a smaller camera like the Sony ZV1 or a camera like the A6400, A6500 or A6600, because they both have kind of a similar price range. You know, the A6400 series is a bit more expensive, but you do get a lot more flexibility out of it. So let's go through some of the pros and cons and the specs to see what we think is best for you. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about price, as that is a big factor if this is your first camera. Now, the Sony A6400 here in the UK costs about £1,000, and for that, you do get a kit lens. Now, the kit lens is a 16 to 50mm lens, and it has an f3.5. Now, if you're new to cameras, you're probably thinking, what does that mean? Well, the 16 to 35 is essentially your zoom length, and just to let you know, a 16mm will be good enough for vlogging. It means you'll be able to hold it out in front of you and get yourself in frame. The f3.5, this is how much light can be let into your lens. That's the aperture. Now, an f3.5 is good, but it does mean you won't get those super nice blurry backgrounds if that's the kind of look you're going for. There are some other pros and cons, of course, to this, but we're just talking about price at the moment. The Sony ZV1 costs £699. It comes with a fixed lens, and again, it has a very sort of similar focal length. It starts at around 24mm equivalent, they say, which again, if you're holding out in front of you, it's easily good enough for vlogging. It's not a super wide lens, but I've used this and it's certainly good enough. And it has a zoom as well, so you can zoom into your subjects if you're going on your travels. The great thing about this is that it comes with a great built-in internal microphone too, so you may not even need to buy an external microphone, which is pretty cool. So you've got $699 and $1,000. But let's go into some more of the specs to see if there's any more pros and cons that you should think about. Now, we've been using both cameras for many months now, and the Sony A6400 is the camera we're filming with now, and if you've seen a lot of videos on our channel, it's the camera that we tend to use the most. Now, the reason I like this camera, the pros of a camera like this, is that it does have interchangeable lenses, and that means you're not stuck with a fixed lens like you are with the Sony ZV1. So if you want to do landscape photography or video, or if you want to get macro close-up shots, you can buy different lenses. So it's sort of infinitely interchangeable to how you want to be for how you're going to shoot your videos. So this is a pro in one sense, but it is a con in another, because of course, if you buy the camera, you may need to buy a selection of lenses to get that focal length or the zoom amounts that you want to be able to film your videos. If we also look at features like the microphones, I would say the internal microphone is better on the Sony ZV1. And the big thing, let's talk about the image quality. Of course, the A6400 is an APS-C camera, so it's not a full frame camera, but it does have a bigger sensor than the tiny Sony ZV1. If we just look at the specs here, so the Sony A6400 features an APS-C sensor, as I've just mentioned, and the Sony ZV1 has a 1-inch sensor. So what does that mean? Well, essentially the sensor area in the camera of the ZV1 is 68% smaller than the A6400. So it should mean that the A6400 gives you far superior image quality. So that was one thing I was worried about when I first got the ZV1. I thought, I'm gonna get this and it's just not gonna be comparable at all to the A6400 and I might need to send it back. But you know what, I've been pretty surprised by the quality coming out of the Sony ZV1. We'll put some more footage up now. And you can see, actually, for a camera of this size and a tiny little image sensor, it actually gives you some great results. And I think that's one of the best things about the ZV1. You know, it's pretty small. I'm just going to turn it off so the lens drops back. you can just pop this in any pocket, pull it out, and it gives you image quality almost as good as the A6400. Now, of course, the A6400 is going to be better, but I don't think it's miles better than the ZV1. It is a little bit better, and of course with interchangeable lenses you get some better depth of field, and you can get sort of sharper focus and things like that. But overall, there's not a huge difference between the two. If you ultimately want image quality, go for the A6400, but if you're looking for a great quality camera, the Sony ZV1 is still in the game. Okay, so what other big differences are there between these two cameras? Well, the first one I think you're going to be interested in is the flip out screen. And this screen can flip all the way around, unlike the Sony A6400 that just kind of flips upwards. Now, why does this make a difference? Well, if you're vlogging and you're out on your travels and you want to hold the camera out in front of you, it's much easier to see the Sony ZV1 screen. It also means if you're doing different shots and you want to get low to the ground, you can angle this screen however you want, which is really, really cool. The A6400 screen doesn't do that. It only flips up and above you. So it's better for your eye line. If you're looking at the A6400, the screen is kind of just above the lens, which is better for your eye line. It doesn't look like you're looking off camera, but this is much more flexible. Another difference is the Sony ZV1 has a built-in ND filter, and I thought for a camera of this size that was pretty cool. An ND filter is essentially a pair of sunglasses for your camera, and it can really help improve your shots in super bright scenarios, like if you're shooting outside in summertime. It will really improve the quality of your shots because you don't have to fire up that f-stop and the aperture for your camera. So the ND filter in the Sony ZV1 is built in. You just press a button and it comes on. If you've got an A6400, it doesn't have an ND filter. You'll need to buy that separately, and if you're shooting video, you definitely need one. Next up is image stabilization. This is a big one, and it's probably the thing that annoys me the most about the A6400. It doesn't have any IBIS in it at all. Now, you can buy lenses with a little bit of stabilization in the lens, but to be honest, they are pretty rubbish. The Sony ZV1 has both IBIS built into the camera, and it has something called Active Steady Shot, which is a software enabled version of IBIS that really helps smooth your shots out. So if you're walking around and you're doing travel vlogs, then I think the ZV1 is the one to go for, because your shots straight out of camera without the use of a gimbal will be much more sturdy. And that's built right into this, and it's not built in to the A6400. Both cameras have all of the Sony picture profiles, so you can shoot in S-Log, in HLG, in Cine 4. And again, if you're new to cameras, a picture profile helps you capture more dynamic range in your shots. So you can have these turned off and the image quality coming out of the cameras is great. But if you want to get more into your edits and do a bit of color correction, then both cameras have those picture profiles. Now, that said, because the A6400 can capture more image data, more colors, then it's going to provide a better quality image to work with and edit than the ZV1. Next up is autofocus. If you're buying a camera and you're vlogging, you want to have good autofocus. You don't want yourself or your subject to be going constantly in and out of focus. Now, the great news here is that both the A6400 and the ZV1 have great autofocus. I would say the ZV1 is slightly better simply because it's a newer camera, but you know what? They're both fantastic. So they are a few of the obvious differences between the A6400 and the ZV1. But we've created this video because we get asked what camera is best for someone who's new to YouTube or new to creating video. And there are a few different scenarios which I think could help you pick one over the other, because it's not as straightforward as it sounds. As I mentioned, we've been using both of these cameras for different videos, so I've got different thoughts about both of these cameras. Okay, so if you're new to YouTube and you haven't created many videos yet and you're on a budget, you know what, go for the ZV1. I think that money you'll save will help you learn if you're going to enjoy your YouTube or filmmaking experience. It's a cheaper camera, it's arguably a little bit easier to set up and use, and you don't have to fiddle around with lenses. That said, the image quality coming out of it is pretty great, and the audio quality coming out of the camera is really good too. The other person I think this is great for is if you're a travel vlogger. If you're planning to go through airports when we get out of COVID, or you're going to be doing a lot of walking around, maybe some sports, again, I would go for the ZV1. it's cheaper, which means if you break it, it's less of a damage to your wallet. But secondly, it has that image stabilization, which the A6400 doesn't have. Now, cameras like the A65 and A6600 do have image stabilization, but this is still better because it has that active image stabilization at the moment. So if you are going around on your travels, this will fit into your bag, it will fit into your pocket, and it will give you some great image quality. So if you're a traveler, think about going for the ZV1. Now, I would pick the A6400 if you're doing shots like this now. If your plan is to do YouTube or create videos where the camera is primarily going to be on a tripod and you're just talking to camera, or you're just panning left and right to get some product shots, things like that, then go for the A6400. It offers a bit better image quality that I think you will really see, especially if you start playing around with different lenses. Now, we are not using the kit lens on this at the moment because the image quality was okay, but it's not great. So we're using a Sigma 16mm lens, which offers a f1.4 aperture, and it's really, really nice. It means you get some nice blurry backgrounds. It's a nice focal length, and it's just really crispy and sharp, so much sharper than the kit lens. So I think the A6400 is perfect if you're doing YouTube, if you're doing it at home, you're doing it in a studio, and you've got a tripod. I would go and spend a little bit more money and get the A6400, because even though you do have to spend money on lenses, you can keep those lenses for future cameras, and they keep their value. They hold their value really well, so you can always sell those lenses and purchase new ones in the future. So I hope that video has helped you. I hope you've enjoyed all the footage. We're going to play even a bit more footage now between the cameras, and let me know in the comment section below, what image did you prefer coming from these cameras? Do you have any questions about either of these cameras? Because we can answer any questions that you might have. Anyway, thanks for watching, and if you do choose to buy the ZV1 or the A6400, we've got a load of other videos for accessories you might need, ways to stabilize your footage, and all that kind of stuff here on the channel. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.